Welcome to Your Health Reset, where we address the real root causes behind health issues today to get you rapid results on your health journey so you can be who you came here to be, mind, body, and spirit. I'm your host, Sinclair, survivor of complex chronic illness, expert on resolving root causes, and co-founder of Detox Rejuvenation and Meditation R.E.S. Let's get started. I'm your host, Sinclair, and today I am joined by my wonderful friend and esteemed colleague, D.R.E.S. Hi, Reed. It's great to have you on here.
Hello. Thank you so much, Sinclair, for having me. I'm just as excited as you are.
Well, what I love about your contribution to this space is that you are truly a disruptor, and you've made it possible for so many people to take charge of their own health and also to create a really meaningful career addressing exactly the things that have gone wrong, I feel, in the health space. So I would love to just talk a little bit about how you arrived on this career path and how you created FDN. And then we'll dive into all the fun specifics.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here and share a little bit about the background, because I went from environmental paralegal and conservationist, saving the planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees, and all that was my life. And all of a sudden in the late last century, 1999, I started really wondering about people. Well, what about people? And what about me? I was in great shape, but I didn't want anything sneaking up on me later, that happens. So I started getting into what's this environment doing to people? And it was just opened up a whole new field. And I've been dedicated ever since to finding out what's really wrong and what is the environment and other epigenetic factors. What do they really do to us? Because that's the secret to success. And quickly, I went to work in a clinic. I switched jobs. I went to work in this clinic. They gave me the run of the place and all this training and things. And I got my nutrition certificate, personal training certificate, and about 10 other certificates over the years. But I worked there for 10 years, Sinclair. And the first thing I noticed was that everyone had already seen 6 or 8 or even 10 different practitioners or more and spent all this money. And now they were coming to us for alternative care in the first place. So they were trying to get out of what I ended up calling the cycle of trial and error, which is just what people are it's a hamster wheel. And this didn't work and that didn't work. And, I ride motorcycles, I'm a big enthusiast. And one day I was out, the wind was blowing through where my hair is supposed to be, and I'm really enjoying my freedom. And I just love being out there and, being healthy and having my own time. And then I thought about the poor people back at the office who were stuck in that cycle of trial and error. And it pissed me off. I just really decided, how could they possibly be putting their health in someone else's hands? And why would people give up control of their health to others? We need to be in control of our own health. And so that's where that freedom comes from me, is being in control. And so I went back to the office after that weekend and I said, hey, I'm going to be the last person you need to see. Well, that's a joke back then. I didn't know anything. How are you going to pull that one off, Reed? I never really cared about the how. It's the why. Well, I was determined. I'm going to help people. And I spent the next 10 years running thousands and thousands of labs with thousands of people. And I made some pretty important discoveries. And that's where this whole FDN movement came from. It wasn't something I learned in a workshop here and there or picked up from one lab in particular. But I spent 10 years in a clinic, face to face with people who were stuck in that cycle of trial and error. And I really tried my best to be the last person they needed to see. So that's how the thing developed. And after 10 years of that, I was asked to teach. Pushed in, you got to be teaching me. And so that's what I've been doing since 2008, really, was teaching the FDN course. And you alluded to the community and the number of people we've empowered to go out and help others using a system that's so easy to use. Again, you said the title was, fast results, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how quickly people can turn around.
I totally agree. And it's such a necessary conversation right now. You know a little bit about my story. I did wait and I did ignore my body, all the early signs until I crashed and ended up in the hospital as a mystery patient. And they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I ended up checking myself out. No health insurance, totally freaked out, totally disillusioned that these people had no even direction to point me in what had led me, to crash so bad that they thought they had to admit me. I'm really passionate about this topic, just like you. And I really want to pick your brain today. You've had this benefit. We were talking about this before we started, of getting to see this 30,000-foot view because of this whole certification that you've developed and now sending thousands of practitioners through it. You get to see a lot of the trends and what's working and what's not working, as people's illness explodes today. We now have 6 out of 10 adults who actually have a diagnosis. And that doesn't even count all the people who are not feeling well and are still a mystery patient like I was for years.
I'm going to borrow that term from you, by the way, if that's okay, mystery patient. People that were coming in the office 4 years ago were mystery patients to them. It was a mystery. It's, there's a way we can figure this out. And that's how we started the program a long time ago, just grinding it out. And I wish I'd have known you back then.
I know, right? And I wish I'd have known you back then. So one of the things I really want to unpack with you today is where you think medicine is looking and like assessing things incorrectly, like missing certain cues, because I know that one of your strengths is really looking at lab work in a different way. So I really want to do that with you. But first, I want to actually talk about what you feel is one of the, deep root causes of illness today. And you could speak really eloquently on this. How does stress play a role in our development of imbalance in our health?
Yeah, talk about this extensively. Matter of fact, in 2001, I read an article on stress, and it was a major cause of 70 to 80% of all doctor's visits. And I thought, well, I should probably become an expert in stress then. And so I dove into it, and it actually does cause a lot of disease. And people use this term all the time, like gut dysfunction. Everything begins in the gut. I don't believe that. I think it circles around to the gut a lot. And in many people, maybe a majority of people, it circles around there. But really, our ability to deal with the environment, epigenetic factors, genetic things, and how bad things are out there, the influences on us, there's a lot of signaling. And I would call all of that stress, whether it's mental, emotional stress, whether it's trauma, physical trauma. I've had some accidents and sports injuries and things, and pain is a form of stress, Then, of course, there's the chemical and biochemical environmental stressors. And so the body responds the same to all of them. You get into a stress response, you're in fight, flight. You could be in it all the time and not even know it. And that will break your body down. The stress hormone, mostly cortisol, you have epinephrine, and these things that will break you down. You get into a catabolic state. It's not good for you. And then in your weakest areas, you'll find disease starting or manifesting in some way. And it could go straight to the gut for sure. But I think it starts with the catabolic and anabolic imbalance. So that means stress. There's only 2 types of metabolism. Catabolism, where you're breaking down, and anabolism, where you're building up. Not to be confused with cannibalism.
Let's leave that firmly to the side.
All right, I promise not to crack you up. So anyway, no, this is...
We have to stay focused. We have a lot of material to get through.
Wonderful thing here.
Okay, so talk to me about why are we missing this and how to assess and deal with stress, and how does it actually break down the body over time?
Okay, well, I have all of this in my course, charts, diagrams, and lessons and recordings, things that make it really simple. You start at the beginning with whatever it is going on in your life. Again, I said the mental, emotional, chemical, biochemical, physical trauma, things like that. And some of those things, by the way, could have happened many years ago, and you're still walking around with it. And it builds up. It's accumulative. So when you get into that catabolic state, there's more cortisol than there is DHEA. Those are the 2 major things that we measure. That can be done with a simple saliva test at home by anyone, anywhere, almost on the planet. We can ship you a test kit, some little saliva tubes in it. We can figure out catabolic. And you can also get other information. You can measure the sex hormones. You can measure melatonin. You can measure secretory IgA through saliva. And so now what you're seeing is, yes, you're in a catabolic state. And when that secretory IgA goes down, that means your immune system's being affected. Where's most secretory IgA? So number 1, defense chemical, if you want to call it that, in the gut. And whereas, 70 to 80% of your immune system in the gut. So with one test, the simple saliva test, you're seeing high cortisol, you're seeing low secretory IgA, tells you that not only is your cortisol to DHEA out of balance, you're in that catabolic state, But now we see the secretory IgA going down chronically. So now what? You've got a dysbiosis. You're open to infection and overgrowth and infestation and things like that. That's where you first might feel it. So you're going to be stressed out. Some people don't even know how stressed out they are. They're just walking around in a sympathetic overload state. You wouldn't know anything about this. So people are overly sympathetic, they're catabolic, and now their immune system goes down, and that's when they feel it. See, they start getting sick. But it starts in the gut because that's where the symptom is occurring. But in my practice, in my experience, chasing symptoms has never worked. There's lots of things you can take, symptoms go away. Have you really changed anything? Epigenetically speaking, have you really solved that person's problem? No, you haven't. You just got rid of their symptoms. And oh, by the way, I have the same feeling or knowledge about the test results. See, they're not the problem either. You can get all this data, which I love data. I mean, I've run thousands of labs. I teach a course in functional lab work. It's what we do is collect data. But the results on the paper aren't the problem. They're just the result of the problem. So if all you do is give that person something to change the numbers on the paper, that's good for the paper. Congratulations, you're treating the paper. They might even feel a little bit better. You know, the symptoms are abating to some degree, but the underlying causes and conditions generally left unresolved. And so what I found is that by getting a lot of data and correlating it really well, I call it like a constellation of healing opportunities. No diagnosis. We do zero medical diagnosis. We're getting the data before the doctor gets it. We're getting it directly from the lab. Remember, I spent all those years in the office, and I had good doctors to work with, good mentorship there. But I had the lab guys too, the lab rats, who are just, all they were into was the data and the things that caused that data to shift. And so we're getting the data before the physician. So no diagnosis and treatment. That's too narrow. That's reductionism. That's like going, oh, here's your problem. And then they treat the paper. Here's something to change the numbers. And again, even if you feel better, you haven't dealt with this entire constellation of data. The only way to deal with that is through lifestyle modification. You know, epigenetic factors, you bring different signaling in. Most people have lived themselves in to their chronic downward spiraling condition, and they can live themselves out of it. And the data really helps. Again, not diagnosis and treatment. Our words are healing opportunities. And so we can identify a bunch of them and then simply apply the general principles of healing, the principles of healing, and outperform diagnosis and treatment. So it is a different paradigm. There's no reductionism in it. It's getting that whole person. That's why I say it doesn't start in the gut. It starts with stress, and then the gut's affected, and then dysbiosis occurs, and then you get bigger bugs and infestations, and then you get leaky gut. Once you get leaky gut, the whole humoral system goes up in smoke, you know, and you've got problems depending on your individual weak links in metabolism. So the same stressors that we're all under affect individuals differently. And what do people chase? Those differences. They're chasing this and that and this and that. And really, it's up here in an entire constellation of, again, healing opportunities or epigenetic factors. And that's why we like that 30,000 foot view, don't we?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's so interesting to hear you say, and just to sum up in a few words, what's gone wrong with the diagnosis and treatment and why it's not working with these stress-induced chronic conditions. It's actually really profound to me because that's exactly what happened to me. You know, I was in mental health. I didn't care about physical health at all. I was like, it's all for me, you know, it's all mental and emotional and spiritual. And, you know, we're going to work a workshop, we're going to do a process, you know, and I really wasn't willing to look at what my stress, what my trauma, what my lifestyle had done to my body until it was way, way too late.
I agree. Yeah. Physicians generally in current education system have a one part, one problem, one fix mentality. It's what they're taught. And it's too bad because in 1903, Thomas Edison, famous inventor, good guy, all that stuff, he said that the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patient instead in diet, care of the human frame, and so on. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Edison, but you were wrong, buddy, because when he said that, there was a trend beginning with the pharmaceutical companies, but there was only about 6 in the day. There was only 100 different medications. And here we fast forward, the number of prescriptions written in the United States alone last year was over 4 billion. The amount of money made in pharmaceuticals alone in this country was $512 billion. So if he was right, the doctor of the future, none of that would be happening right now. So he was wrong about that, at least. It's amazing how big the standard medicine model is. And so people aren't trained in what we're talking about. And people are trained in the opposite, that you take a pill for your problem. Lotion, potions, powders, pills, billions and billions of dollars. Even the supplement industry is about 20% of the size of drugs. That's $100 billion in supplements. Why? Because people think they can take something for something. Hey, and I've got them all over my desk, all over my kitchen counter. I take them, but I know that if you don't eat right and go to bed on time and reduce stress and exercise, heard that word before. And, then supplements might mean something. You have to change your entire point of view and consider the entire person. Like you just said, mental, emotional, spiritual, are all part of it.
Yeah, we teach that about 25% of your protocol can be supplements, and the rest has got to get filled in with other means. So.
I'll give it 20%.
Oh, all right. So I would love to jump into the lab work itself, because I know you have some really strong opinions about, looking at the wrong markers or overemphasizing certain markers, and misinterpreting what actual insight they give into someone's state of health. And I love what you said earlier about like, hey, let's not treat the paper. It's the problem I have with not just the allopathic medical community, but also functional medicine can fall into that trap as well. And even biohacking, it's like, well, you have low T, we got to push that T up. I was like, well, but why do you have low T?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not just age, which gets blamed. Everything gets blamed on age and genetics, and that's not fair to you. It's partially true. There's some facts there, but, you can counter that with good behavior. Wish I could do it. Bad behavior is so much more fun. No, but seriously, there's a way it all begins with that point of view, that paradigm. Either you have reductionism, where it's diagnosis and treatment of a specific thing, or you have a holistic mentality where it's everything. It's every cell, tissue, organ, and system in your body, including how you think, what you believe, and then energy, and things can work out a lot better for you. And I've seen miracles occur. I mean, absolute, within a very short period of time. I have so many stories that we don't have time for. And these were things I stumbled onto early that made me know I was on the right track. So it's really remarkable when you at least look upstream for causal factors.
Okay, so let's unpack that, because I know that a lot of people that come to the practitioners that you train, they're similar to who you saw in the past and who comes to us now in our practice. They're mystery patients. They've got lab stacks this thick. It takes them hours to upload all the documents in our portal. Our students are the same way. Or, the other audience listening to us are the practitioners that are also treating, mystery patients.
Yeah. Do you want me to show you something about
I would love that.
Good to have a visual.
Let's
so I'm going to share my screen. This is a presentation. I've done a million different versions of mastering metabolic chaos. Now, this is where I tell a story about being out on my bike and going off the road. And the mechanic, when I finally got in, he says, "Sir, we've diagnosed your problem." Can you see?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. So we've diagnosed the problem. We have the parts in stock, and we can replace them and have the bike back to you tomorrow. I said, fantastic. But he used the word diagnose. It's the same term doctors use for people. And I wonder why we doctors treat bodies like vehicles. It's just, to me, that's what's happening. So I spent all those years, as I mentioned, I used to be this environmental paralegal conservationist. I went to health director and case manager at a wellness center, identified the cycle of trial and error, decided I'd be the last person patients needed to see. The cycle of trial and error looks like this. You get told you're normal. Do you know anyone, or have you ever been told you're normal? Like your blood work looks normal?
Oh, yeah, it looks fine.
It looks fine. And you feel like crap.
Would you like an antidepressant?
Yeah. Well, so anyway, people go on trying different things. and no one's needs are really being met. Not even the practitioner who's here making money doing this stuff, because when you're in the business to help people and you can't get good job satisfaction from that. So this is a really quick story about Susan. She was coming in for chiropractic care 20 years ago, and she was really sad one day. I said, "What's wrong?" She goes, "Oh, it's this weight. I'm really disgusted with myself. It's this weight." And me being all Mr. Happy, "What are we going to do about that? Let's do something." "No, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. I'm on this medication for the hives, and it's driving me nuts. This medication for the hives makes me fat." And I was at Reed, before I get words out of my mouth, she says, "Reed, I was at the doctor just the other day for a checkup. I told him that this weight was really crushing me. And he said, 'Lady, you can be fat or you can have the hives, take your pick.'" Then she says, "Well, that's depressing." And he says, "I can write you a prescription for antidepressants."
Oh my God.
That was the solution. And I said to her, "Well, Susan, why didn't you try to find out why you get the hives?" And her head swung around so hard, I thought she wouldn't need her chiropractic adjustment that day. She just was like, "What?" I said, "Look, we can do some tests." Long story short, after we got her test results and gave her some changes to make, it was 9 days and she was off the meds and working out to a sweat and taking hot showers, which she hadn't done in 2 years. So this completely changed people's lives. And I still didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I was doing something better than what that guy was doing. And so I kept running labs. We'll skip this part. Again, a lot of miracles occurred. This is a story of a mother whose boy was being told he needed to be on Ritalin at school. And I said, "What? A doctor working at this?" "No, it's his teachers and principals saying he needs to be on Ritalin for the behavior." And I said, "Well, do you think your son has a Ritalin deficiency?" She didn't think that was fun. And she goes, "No, I'm saying like this, he's 9 years old being told that he needs to be on drugs." So we ran some labs, figured out what's going on with the young man. And within 3 weeks, Sinclair, the principal of the school, that's supposed to be him there, from a stock photo, but he called me and said, "What'd you put Billy on?" Because his behavior's completely changed. I said, "Sir, we didn't put him on anything. We figured out what he needed to be off of, basically." So stories like that. So what I figured out, and this is a big slide, I actually dropped the word root cause. Why? Because there's so many. Everybody has multiple causal factors. There's multiple genetic factors. There's multiple epigenetic factors. So I've dropped root cause. It's good to look for them. We go upstream. We run the hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification tests. We look for energy production, nervous system, and things like that. But I really discovered that, look, there's all these multiple causal factors. And just like the rings here, look at them. They're having an effect upon each other, Sinclair. And that is not singly measurable, hardly ever. You can't singly measure the interactions between causal factors. You can pick out a couple, but if that's all you do, you're still going to have trouble. So this is what functional medicine is good at is, well, let's go upstream, look a little higher upstream for causal factors. Oh, found one or maybe two. Let's work on those. And they're still not getting the whole picture. So this is really beyond functional medicine even. I call it intellopathy. So my school, of course, is called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, but it's really intellopathy, intelligence gathering and smart pathway, intellopathy. And where we do look at each point that might have caused a ring, and then those dots, and we connect those dots. And there's a way to do it if you look at each individual person and their metabolic differences. It's really amazing mentality. I have categorized most of the causal factors. This is just from discovery. This is, again, not made up to be cute. This is what over 10 years running thousands of labs on thousands of people turned up for me and became this solution in our office that we got really famous for and why they pushed me into teaching. So we know already the symptoms don't matter. They're just what's on the surface, looking at the iceberg. Lab values, as I said earlier, they're not the problem either. They're just the result. You really want to get into the chronic stress-related dysfunctions. So there's that word stress again, where there's all these different causal factors. And like the rings in that previous picture, they're all having an effect upon each other. But I generally categorize hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. You can throw in oxidative stress. It's really important, but that would screw up my hidden acronym. And so it's really metabolic chaos because it's all going on at once. And so we seek these hidden stressors, really healing opportunities within these areas, and then apply wellness principles. And guess what? It outperforms specific treatment, even on a functional medicine level. When you just have one concern, one diagnosis, if you will, it's just metabolic chaos. I was going to tell another story real quick about a lady with migraines, miracle. But I will show you this. I'll save that time to spend time on this. This is people, metabolic chaos, each with their own individual weak links in metabolism. And of course, they're going to come to us with complaints. They may come with thyroid symptoms over here in the hormone area. There's my HIDEN plus oxidative stress, as I said. They come with thyroid symptoms. You know what those symptoms are. We don't have to go over them. And you go, oh, that's thyroid. Let's treat the thyroid. Well, thyroid's a hormone problem, but so is adrenal and sex hormone problems, and so on. And so what I figured out is that the hormone issues are the result of metabolic chaos, and yet they also contribute to metabolic chaos. Again, the rings having an effect upon each other, and no one being more important than the other. And no one's smart enough, believe me, to pick which one, even if they're really good at symptoms. You'd have to get really lucky. So I don't depend on luck. I depend on running a handful of labs on every single person. And I already mentioned the cortisol to DHA ratio. When that's elevated, you're in a catabolic state. We start with catabolism versus the anabolic state. Now, what happens invariably is secretory IgA goes down. That's the immune system, mostly in the gut. What happens? Well, we know it's the immune system. Now this metabolic chaos, which is hormonal in nature, stress-related, is actually having an effect on the immune system. Now, once you get mucosal surface integrity problems there, lining of the gut, you get into this inflammatory state, still in the gut perhaps, and now it starts to snowball. Remember, the rings keep expanding, and it contributes. You've got more metabolic chaos. And depending on weak links in metabolism, it may not go in this exact order, but the order is important to learn here. And guess what happens? Now you've got dysbiosis, maybe even SIBO. Why? Well, because you've secretory IgA down, the bad bacteria, start to overcome the good bacteria and things. You end up with gas, bloating, motility issues. Some people, that's a huge area of symptoms. That's what people say. Oh, it all begins in the gut. No, we're way past it beginning in the gut. It circles around, of course. Now, another really cool measurement, probably doctors learned about this in school, but have forgotten about it because, like when I was a kid, doctors did this in the office. Every doctor would look for digestive and leaky gut and things like that. Positive income is a simple urine collection. So with this cortisol DHA, secretory IgA, you've only run one test. That's a simple saliva test. We ship these all over the world. We're in 50 countries doing this work, and it really works. So now another little simple urine test, because what happens after you got dysbiosis, you're going to have antigen penetration. The walls of the gut start to open up. And then you've got liver congestion because the antigens and immune complexes flow through to the liver. Now you've got detoxification problems. And detoxification problems are the result of metabolic chaos, depending on one's weak links in metabolism. And they also obviously contribute to more metabolic chaos. So this idea of cycle and trial and error was, I had to sort it out. That was my mission. That was me wanting to be the last person. By the way, these two markers here are easily collected in one simple dried urine specimen. And so it's amazing how easy it is to do this work. So here we are. And listen, I'm a lay practitioner. I'm a guy who's in the office who has to be super, super aware. Remember, my previous background was law, so I'm not going to break it. I'm not going to do anything that even resembles diagnosis and treatment of a specific condition like a physician. You have to be licensed to do that. And you have to be licensed, by the way, Sinclair, because it's dangerous. Like driving a car, you have to be licensed. Why? Because you can kill people, including yourself, if you don't do it right. So diagnosing and treating is actually very dangerous. Matter of fact, medical mistakes are the cause of 250,000 deaths per year in the country. And that's the very conservative.
Yeah, those are the ones that we're actually.
Yeah, I think it's closer to 500,000, but whatever. So we don't want to do that. Instead, I was forced from my lay practitioner status to only look at underlying causes that actually could be influenced by changing one's epigenetic influences, the lifestyle. So I was on a roll with the cyclotron there, figuring things out, but I hadn't remember, it took me 10 years to figure this out. Well, what else can I look at? Energy production became a huge thing. And so we look at oxidative rate. There's slow, fast, there's in between. And that can be regulated, believe it or not, just with your diet. Now, am I practicing medicine by recommending that? No. So, but we're handling energy production, weight and fat distribution, carb metabolism factors in, glucose homeostasis factors in huge to this, as does the autonomic types, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So that's easily determined as well, as long as the oxidative stress, like I said. Now, you look at all these complaints people come in with, whatever it is, the answer is always there's metabolic chaos. And if you don't have a system of sorting it out, if you're still bound sometimes by your licensure to, I can only diagnose and treat specific things, you're really not going to get people who are coming to you to the wellness state that they desire. Their ladder, that public's ladder, is up against the wrong wall. You're going to the wrong person. If you have all of these multiple symptoms, multiple causal factors, those causal factors are all crashing into each other. And you go to a physician who is bound by his or her licensure to diagnose and treat specifics, especially since that's how they get paid by, DX code, CPT code, and insurance reimbursement and stuff. You're kind of screwed if that's all you have to go to. Now, I think from your own personal story, you can identify with that. I'm done with this slide.
I think it's a really helpful visual for people to look at. Like this, what we're talking about is looking at this in a global way instead of this disease specific, singular root cause. What we're actually saying is really essential to the whole experience of this summit and what people are going through today, which is, one type of disruption leads to another, and there's never just one root cause. We see that all the time.
Yeah, I'll just continue. So we have this one concern, it's metabolic chaos, Buddha, the one concern. Couldn't find a better picture. And over time, these things accumulate. Metabolic chaos builds upon every factor, and it causes certain factors. Again, remember, there's weak links in metabolism, and it just builds up. And so, yes, you get more and more advanced metabolic chaos with time. Therefore, age is going to take the blame. Age gets the blame because it's had time to accumulate. But it isn't age itself, it's the accumulation. It's not knowing what's going on. So symptoms don't matter, but that's okay. They can be very far removed from, where the symptom is occurring, and that's okay because you can have an effect upon whatever those root causes are when you know what steps to take. Now, I'm going to finish really quickly here. Another story about a kid who had asthma that was completely clear. He was on my football team and completely cleared that up. Gathering better intel is about hormone immune, digestion, detoxification, and all these other factors. So we run these 5 labs on every single person. Why? Because I don't know what the cause. I'm not smart enough to use the sounds like system, which I could explain. And so it's really 3 easy steps. The title of our summit includes how rapidly one can overcome things when you look at it all at the same time. Look at everything, not one thing. And 2, then treat everything, not one thing. This system, we call it the D.R.E.S.S for Health Success System, D.R.E.S.S. It was so successful, we were granted a trademark. And it works. It just freaking works. It's an epigenetic program based on wellness principles, addresses all healing opportunities at once. The H, I, D, D, E, N, and oxidative stress and everything, every cell, tissue, organ, and system is going to improve. So we're not treating one thing, not practicing medicine. We're using a holistic system so that a person can actually self-treat everything going on in their body. And number 3 would be kind of a coaching program. 1 and 2 are easy. 1 is you ran the labs. 2 is you design a individualized D.R.E.S.S for Health Success program. That's what my practitioners are trained to do. And then because we're also in the coaching field or appendage to it, adjunctive to it, 3 is running the program. You can't just tell a patient, go here, take this, come back in 3 months, and then we'll titrate the dosage. That's not going to work. It's like, what are we going to do together for the next 3 months now that we figured out a bunch of stuff? So it's this program of minimum 90 days to go through certain phases. So in this process here of what are you going to do in the next 3 months? after we figure all this stuff up. It's about, number one is relief. This is where that rapid turnaround comes in. You get relief. Your symptoms seem to be dissipating. And you don't know why. Well, we know why. And then, of course, there's the corrective phase. Now, correction of something can take longer. The body needs time to heal. And then the third thing, of course, is maintenance. We are going to teach people so much. I can pretty much teach everything I know in 3 to 6 months, everything I know. And so now I don't like the word empowered, but you certainly are in a better position to take care of yourself and your family and anyone else around you. And by the way, you can turn it into a profession, since that's what we teach, is how to do this. I like to say this to wrap it up. There's no powerboating to health. Everyone has different sails and keel and rudder, and there's waves and, slapping on the hole. There's currents under the water. There's wind in the sails. There's all this stuff. You have to zigzag. There is this course correction. And that's what we do in this 90-day period minimum. So it's really remarkable. Step one is to run the lab. Step two is to design a customized program for each individual. And then, of course, then work with that person. What I learned in the office, one of the main things in those 10 years, there's practitioners, chiropractic, acupuncture, come in for your treatments. I started thinking, what are you doing between your treatments? That's what's going to have the biggest effect. And so that's where the whole D.R.E.S.S for health success thing came from. Again, you're talking history, but thousands and thousands of people, you stumble across a thing or two, right? So it's really summing it up, all that innate intelligence in the body, the fact that the body wants to be healthy, the fact that you don't have to teach a cell what its job is. Every cell knows what its job is. There's that creative intelligence, right? Versus the influences, the metabolic chaos that's created. So we just coach up balance and resiliency. That's how I define health. I'm throwing a lot at you here. I'm sorry. With D.R.E.S.S, while we coach down the contributors to metabolic chaos, known stressors, hidden stressors, which is why you have to run the labs. I don't know how else to help you. And then all discoverable contributors to metabolic chaos, we over time will uncover these obstacles to healing. And when you uncover obstacles to healing, they could be some gut thing, they could be some tissue thing, what have you. They could also be in the mind and emotions of the person. Those can be obstacles. And what do we do when we identify them? We get creative. We creatively overcome those obstacles. And by, again, going back to our principles, coaching up function, coaching down contributors to metabolic chaos, could be your neighbors, could be your kids, could be your job. It could also be environmental pollutants. It could also be foods that you're sensitive to. It could be so many things, but we know what those things are, because we've been studying for so long. You're not alone. If you're struggling, whether you're a person just here to seek your own health, or whether you're a practitioner seeking a better system that actually really works, that you can feel that. To me, it's an emotional thing. When I helped that lady with the migraines, when I helped that kid with the asthma, when I helped that lady, the 40-pound overweight person who was being told to stay on her medication and take antidepressants, and you solve that person's problem, do you have any idea? Yes, you do. You know how rewarding that is. And that's why we do this stuff. So if you want to know more, there's a URL for you, fdntraining.com/rapid. And because that's our title today, and you can go there to learn more. We have a free course tour. You can actually start the course for free. So there's my pitch. I really wanted to pitch the ideas of metabolic chaos, but so you have it. Back to you.
Back to you in the studio. I think this is so important, Reed, the overview that you've given us, a whole approach to actually addressing different lifestyle factors and what has actually gone wrong for most people, because whether or not you're just starting out on your health journey and you're still trying to learn your body and what's going on and unlearn what you have normalized, right? It's like, oh, I'm just getting older. No, you're watching everyone else around you get sick as well. Common is not the same thing as normal, right?
Yeah.
So whether you're at that end of the journey or you're like, dude, I have a stack of labs this thick and no one can figure me out. If you look at that hidden slide in particular, if you go back, there's a way to address something fresh. Did you overlook it at this point? Did you not have the other elements necessary in balancing your protocol for your body to actually tackle this at that time? Did you approach it in the order that your body requires to heal itself, right? I love that your approach and mine are so compatible in the sense that, like, we're working with the body's intelligence. We're not trying to override it. we're never going to outsmart the body. So how can we assess what it needs, right?
Well, we have to give credit where credit's due. And, we are in the alternative space, health space, and seeking natural solutions for the most part. But, if you're the victim of a drive-by shooting, or, you fall off a swing set and break your arm, and the bones sticking out of the skin, bleeding and stuff, but you don't call your nutritionist. You're definitely going to go and get the kind of urgent and heroic care that you need. And that would apply to any condition. And the way I like to put it, Sinclair, again, in fairness, there's a way we can all work together. Remember, we talked about the downward spiral of dysregulation and dysfunction. Well, when there's time, then the observations we make with those 5 labs I showed you, there's time to negotiate, navigate metabolic chaos, sort it out, improve function on a cellular tissue organ level, right? But if that downward spiral is contracted, you need to go see a physician. If you get off a plane from West Africa and your temperature's 105 and you're bleeding from your eyeballs, you're not going to call your FDN practitioner, not first. First, you're going to go to the emergency room and have someone save your life. So again, when the downward spiral is very contracted, there's no time to capitalize on our observations.
Right.
It'd be just like if we need to air. Okay. There's no FDN solution for that. Get air, but everything else, all the long-term chronic stress-related conditions, which is where anti-aging comes in, then we're in shape. We're your ball game. We're the field you need to be on for sure.
I totally agree. Well, that's the emergency in my mind as we look at our Western culture, is this slow disintegration of our health. Acute care is done really well, like that base is covered. But how do we, as a culture, shift this slow distortion?
I think it's education. I think that's what the information is there. But if you don't know how to use it and put it into practice, which is why I'm creating this army of practitioners out there, and they're having a ball, and they're making more money than they've ever made helping people. And, I don't know what could be better than that, being successful. When you're successful, then you can afford the lifestyle that you want your customers to follow. If you aren't successful, then if you're not living it, if you're not setting an example, then how are you going to get others to do it too? It's lead, not push. I think that's a beautiful thing that we get to do. And I'm tickled to be in your community.
Thanks, Reed. You're such an amazing luminary in this space. I love having you here with us. And thanks for your contribution and everything you do. Thanks for listening. Go to detoxrejuvenation.com to find the links in the show notes to everything we covered in this episode. Please subscribe, review, and share with other humans who need this precious information. Let's help each other. Until next time, love, Sinclair.